Hello, everyone. It's been a while. My throat is starting to feel better, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. So today I wanted to talk about a contentious topic among a lot of people who go to a lot of things, like sports games. And if you're a parent, this becomes a real problem really fast when you get into a discussion with someone who does not agree with you. But it is something I think that is a serious problem within our society, especially when it comes to Catholics, and that's Sunday sports. And Sunday sports is not a small thing. A lot of people take it very seriously, so seriously that it's almost looked like a job, right? Like, so you're still doing things where you're obligated to like take your kid to not to school but to sports, and they're expected to perform at a certain level, right? Or be there for their team any way that is. Oh no, we didn't change. You're right. You're right. We did not change Father Paul. Father Paul should be wearing green. Oh no. All right. So you're absolutely correct. My bad. I totally messed that up. um, so he's up there. You can see him with his gingered hair. But the so what I'm getting at though is with this is Sunday sports is a real problem in a lot of areas of life because it prioritizes a very like a fairly profane thing, and we want to pretend that it's called leisure, right? Like so if you look up Catholic answers, and other areas, if you ask, hey, is sports sinful on Sunday, the answer is typically no, and they kind of just leave it at that. Like, um let me try to get the Catholic answers thing because I specifically called them out. um Catholic answers sports on Sunday. Um, Sorry, I specifically um, called them out, so I want to make sure that I'm giving them their due. So let me bring this up. Entire screen, and I apologize for the sloppiness. Is it sinful to attend Catholic school sports on Sunday? It says no, they're not sinful either to participate in or to attend as a spectator. Some may think such Sunday participation is sinful because Protestant sensibilities regarding the Lord's Day have long reigned in the United States. The Catholic Church agrees that needless shopping should be avoided, and so that we shouldn't needlessly burden people in working on Sunday. The Church takes a different perspective regarding restaurant and sporting events. See CCC 2187. Some may counter with the example of the British Christian runner Eric Liddell, whose story was depicted in the movie Chariots of Fire, which won the Oscar for the Best Picture in 1962. Liddell refused to run events on Sunday during the 1924 Paris Olympics because of his perspective on the Third Commandment. He thus didn't compete in the 100 or the 4 times the mile meter relay, but did win the 400-meter dash and placed in the third and 200. As Catholics, we can commend Liddell for doing what we did to honor God, but we would disagree with him on his interpretation of keeping holy the Sabbath or Lord's Day. The Church has long seen Sunday sporting events as an opportunity to give joyful witness to the Lord. Consequently, Catholic athletes have never been obliged to miss Olympic events on Sunday, and I'm not aware of any Protestant competitor in the 4 major profession sports leagues in the United States, NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL, who abstain from playing on Sundays, and there are a good number of devout Protestant Christians in those respective leagues. Similarly, as a youngster playing Catholic youth organization football in the Detroit Catholic League, we would participate in Sunday Mass and then participate in all our late morning football games. We kept things in proper perspective with faith, family, and football in that order, and thus playing football was a positively formative experience for us, our parents, and our classmates. Consequently, enjoy Sunday Catholic school sporting events, whether as a participant or a spectator. So I'm gonna come like a little hard on this guy because I live in the Archdiocese of Detroit, and it is currently banned to do CYO on Sunday because it's such a problem. So, like, I know he's like citing the Catholic, like he's citing my Archdiocese, but like we currently have a situation where my girls and my son cannot play on Sunday because there is a ban, because it has gotten so bad. And that's what this doesn't address. It doesn't address when the obsession with idolizing sports on Sunday, because that's what it ends up becoming. It becomes an issue of, my kid has to play the best soccer on the best team. He's 4 years old, and he himself is enjoying himself. He doesn't know better. Not so much as a like leisurely sporting event, but as an obligation to perform. When again, it should be leisurely. And so it's like, it's not just the 4-year-old, but it's the 4-year-old up until they're 18. And so like, I'm not too thrilled about the fact that this guy gives a lot of answers. Like I don't typically disagree with Catholic answers. But the fact that he cites my archdiocese, and my archdiocese currently has a ban on Sunday sports, is a real problem. Generally speaking, like if you're playing sports with your friends, like that's not what we're talking about, right? Like there's a difference between playing sports with your friends and then playing sports in a way that necessitates, again, an obligation that every other day of the week like is there for. And the idea that like his appeal to the NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL not like restricting players does not then mean that that's still okay. I mean, like they're still working on Sunday, right? Like they're still performing. And so like I'd love to have a conversation about this, because it doesn't seem to me that this is like, to say that this is a Protestant understanding. Like the Protestant understanding, from how I see the sports and how it's been presented and held here in the Archdiocese, is that you can just max out on sports every day of the week and it's completely fine. Like that doesn't make any sense. Because again, you're forcing an obligation, not only on yourself, but on your kid. And especially when it starts becoming an issue where people aren't going to mass, which in my family absolutely happened. So like, not to bring up my own anecdotes, but a lot of people probably do know of situations where they know people who chose not to go to mass because they had to go to some sporting event, travel soccer or travel hockey. Because I live in Michigan, and that's, hockey is a sport. It's a great sport. I'm trying to be as objective as possible, because like this does get in the weeds a little bit, and I'd love to have a discussion over this, because again, like the Archdiocese, the Archbishop didn't just do that because he had a Protestant understanding of what was going on. Like, again, it was a very serious problem in the Archdiocese, where families were like, they weren't being leisurely like on their day. So I'm just going to get the Catechism of the Catholic Church. There's a difference between playing sports with your friends in the backyard and having a fun time, fraternizing in that way, like, and enjoying each other's company while playing, physically. Like that's not a problem. And it, like, let's read the Catechism of the Catholic Church before I go on, and maybe make a fool of myself, maybe not. Sanctifying Sundays and holy days require a common effort. Every Christian should avoid making unnecessary demands on others that would hinder them from observing the Lord's Day. Traditional activities, sports, restaurants, etc., and social necessities, public services, etc., require some people to work on Sundays. But everyone should still take care to set aside sufficient time for leisure. With temperance and charity, the faithful will see to it that they avoid the excesses and violence sometimes associated with popular leisure activities. In spite of economic constraints, public authorities should censor or ensure citizens a time intended for rest and divine worship. Employers have a similar obligation toward their employees. So just because someone who's really good at hockey, it's a sport, true, but then they're working on hockey, like, and their job demands it, but like, let's be completely honest, like, it's a sport. Like, it's it's not like a necessity. It's not something that absolutely needs to happen. Like, it's great to watch sports with your friends on Sunday, but there is, like, by doing so, it necessitates that someone is working and being away from their family and being away from potentially going to mass and making it a burden for them to take a day that is expressly, it's supposed to be leisurely, and making it not non-leisurely. And like, even in this, it doesn't necessitate, like, when it says sports and restaurants, it's making a difference between organized sports and then sports that you just do with your friends. Like, there's no difference here. And then, like I said here, like in the Archdiocese of Detroit, and I know I've said this several times already, but for those of you that are just joining in, I'm seeing you guys in the chat. The Archdiocese forbids playing sports on Sundays for any Catholic event. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, you can't even do practice, because parents, especially now in today's world, everyone thinks that they're raising the next Michael Jordan, Steve Eiserman, and they're making sacrifices on Sunday that are directed not towards God, but towards their child in what I would argue to be an idolizing way. Because there is this understanding in the world, even though, like, we don't have a lot of children like we used to, the birth rate's like 1.62 right now in America, but there's definitely an idolization that happens with our kids. And there's not a proper understanding of where that love, obviously should go. Let's see. I think I missed someone. Let's see. No, Olive. Yeah, I know I missed you earlier, so I'm coming back to it. Yeah, like, people in my parish also do this. They show up with at mass with sports clothes on, and it's like really weird because, like, it's one thing to wear a jacket. Like, I think there's a level of, like, we're in Michigan, and so depending on the type of jacket you have and the weather, like, there's some argument there. And obviously I'm talking about the people who can afford different clothes. So I'm not going to pretend that the poor person has to dress perfectly to come in. Okay. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Please don't straw man my point here. Generally speaking, when it comes to those that go to mass, there are people who are able to afford other things that reflect and point to, let's just say, clothing that doesn't have a logo on it that, like, screams, "Look at me." Because, like, that's the problem, is that when you wear clothing at mass and like like, you literally have a logo of a team front and center, like, it doesn't exactly give this sense of reverence with how you're wearing and what you're wearing. So that's it, and it also does become a distraction because you're bringing something that is very clearly profane, like, in the sense of, like, sports memorabilia or swag that is for sports in a sacred space. That creates a tension that many people, like, notice, but it's not just about many people noticing. It's about the fact of keeping the space, like, reverent, right? So So yeah, that happens with us too. All right. Secondly, so many people have their Sundays revolve around the NFL, NBA, or something else. Does anyone else remember when most places, restaurants, and sports were closed on Sundays as well? Exactly. And like that's that's I think like the worst part of it is like you have this like let's talk about it in terms of liturgical seasons, right? The liturgical season of NFL has people going to mass like right away, and then they get home as fast as possible to watch a sports game, and the rest of their day is revolved around that. And they may or may not even have people there. They may just be by themselves. And the idea of like again, there's one thing there, sports by itself is not the problem. It's I think exactly what you said, Mark, and what you're pointing to is that people like instead of pointing towards God, pointing like fraternity is a good thing and it does point towards God. But there's a difference between fraternity and then like indulging in a ritual that you've established where you're by the season of whatever sports team you're watching, you're following that to the T. Because then that becomes an idol. And so this is a very nuanced argument. Like it's not a matter, don't get me wrong, like this isn't cut and dry. And like I unfortunately do not have the language to be incredibly particular about this. And I apologize for that. However, this is also something that I think is addressed poorly. And I live, again, in an archdiocese that bans such events on Sundays being held by any Catholic institution because the parents, they take it too seriously. They make it too much of a focus and it deviates from the leisure time that should be happening with our families and towards God. And I am going to try and get someone to talk to about this because I do think it is an important topic to talk about, especially with those of us that have kids. So thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your week. Oh, and maybe on Thursday, I will be talking with Father John Brown on the state of the church, in which we will be going over the statistics from the Vatican, and we'll also go over the priest statistics from the Catholic Project, and we'll be discussing, the dynamic from both a priest perspective and a statistician's perspective. And so that will, I think, give a fairly holistic view of what's going on. So be ready for that. The only reason why it's a maybe is because he's a very busy guy. And I said that I'd be willing to have this conversation on Thursday, and knowing full well that he may have to postpone it. So that's just the situation. So hopefully everything works out and we're able to have that discussion on Thursday, but I'll let you know the day of. All right. Okay. Thank you. And I'll talk to you guys later.